Welcome to Jerseys for Social Justice, ETSU athletics video series highlighting our black student athletes and coaches and their stories of being black in America. Today's guest, running backs coach, recruiting coordinator for ETSU football, Gary Downs, but of course he is much more than just those titles. Welcome, Gary.
Thank you. Morning, Mike.
Your success story, there's no question about that. You had a scholarship to North Carolina State, nearly a decade-long NFL career, and now a very successful post-playing career in coaching. From the outside looking in, it looks like a very smooth, clean, successful, easy journey, being on the inside, being Gary Downs. What have the 48 years on this earth in your journey looked like?
Well, started from a small town in New Bern, North Carolina. My father was in the military. We moved out to Seattle, Washington, moved from there to Indianapolis, Indiana, Heidelberg, Germany, Columbus, Georgia. I think my experiences in life, the culture I was brought up in, the household I was brought in, really have affected the way things turned out for me. I mean, my mother and father ran a strict household, my dad being in the military, my mom being a banker, having a stable household. My mother was a woman of faith, made sure that we always went to church, held us to a high standard. And then living in different places around the world, different communities, living on a military base, which is multi-ethnic. Economics don't come into play as much. I think those things affected me. It hadn't been totally smooth sailing. When you're taught from an early age that you've got to be better, you've got to do better, you've got to leave no doubt, because people are going to doubt what you could do as a person, academically, athletically, or morally, and you've got to do better than them just to prove that you are as good. And it's never about being better than anybody. It's sort of like overcoming the stereotypes. I've got two boys, one is 19 and one is 15, and I tell them the same thing. You know, it's not about you being better than anybody else, but you've got to lead. You got a couple of minutes, 30 seconds sometimes, to prove to someone, to show them that you're not what they think you are. So it's sort of been a fight to overcome a stereotype your whole life.
Things are not always as they seem, never as easy for the black community, even with the success that you've had, as they would seem, and you've beaten a system that seems to be stacked against you. The New York Times this year put out a stat that said 51 cents on every dollar is made by black men to white men. The median household income for families is $170,000 for white families to $17,000 for black families. The infant and mortality rates are 2.5 times for the black community what they are for the white community, so 2.5 times the amount of mothers and infants dying for the black community. The incarceration rate, 6 times for the black community what it is for the white community. People think of racism on an individual basis, but when you hear stats like that, is there any doubt in your mind that this is a systematic issue?
When I look at stats and numbers, my father used to always say, figures lie and liars figure. And the numbers mean something. They tell a story, but the story is more in depth than that individual. You got to look deep. Why did those teams take place? My individual story, no. I believe I made more, and my household income is more than the statistic. But I know families. I have people in my family that are lower income and they don't have money saved. But I know people that have done better and do well, and they're better, and their numbers are better than their statistics. And saying, you know, what's happening? Why are these things happening? And you understand that when I was in high school, I went to this school. But I'll give you an example. I went to the high school that was nearest to where we lived at. It wasn't the best school. It was a good school, but not the best school. But my father learned that if he sent my brother to a different school, where the academics were a little better, the sports team were a little better, and he did that. And when I had children, I decided the same thing. I put my kids in a community where they had a better school, better opportunities, better coaches. Same thing with colleges. You do the same thing. And not everybody has the opportunity to do those things. Because my father was in the military and they had retirement, and my mother was banking, working on a military base, economics gave them an advantage. Obviously, healthcare was never an issue. And for me, it's been the same thing. I've been blessed. In the end, I've been blessed. Some choices I made, some personal decisions, but been blessed with the option. And I tell my children, it's always about options. If you get the education and you get the money, no, you may not make as much as someone else. You know, you may not get, I hear things about MBAs coming out of college and black MBAs making $50,000 and someone else coming out, a white classmate making $150,000, or a law student coming out and graduating, they get a $35,000 law job, and then someone else gets $200,000. I got a brother-in-law that's a lawyer. I got a cousin that's a lawyer. And they tell me about their struggles, and they got those degrees, and they're making more than the average person, but not making more than the average person in their field. So there are challenges, but in the end, you know, you do what's best for your family and trying to create opportunities for yourself. And sometimes when you do make it, you end up alone in your community. You end up having to move away. And you never want to lose that disconnection, be disconnected, but you have to do what's best for your family.
You're a relatively rare member of the Black community in terms of your success playing and now coaching. You look at the numbers across collegiate athletics, and there is a lot on your shoulders as someone that is guiding, leading, and mentoring young men. 60% of Division I football players are Black. 2.8% of full-time undergraduate degree-seeking students at those same institutions are Black. 60% to 2.8%. That means that role models like yourself for the Quay Holmes of the world, the entire running back group that you are with every day, they need you. When you look at what you're able to do with these young men, how you're able to help them, what are the most effective ways that you've found to be an advocate for those that are coming up through your program?
Well, first of all, I do recognize myself as a role model. I got a younger brother, that's 12 years younger than me, and I got 2 boys at home. Sort of like being salt, being light, being an ambassador for Christ. When I was coming out of high school, my mother wouldn't let me go to a certain institution because no Black players had graduated from that school in, like, let's say 10 years. And while I was playing, I was a pre-med major in college, and I ended up getting drafted. And while I was in the NFL, I knew I needed to get my degree because I knew the numbers. You know, if you earn a college degree, your chance to earn such and such income is much higher. Coming into this role here, Coach Torbush, hired me, and he said, Coach O'Kane, he said, look, Coach O'Kane said, if you are anything like you were when you were in college, if you haven't taken a step back, as long as you've stayed there a step forward, we think you'd be a great example for our young men. And when I came in, I had, Matt Thompson and Corey Colder, Jawan Stinson and Fallon Lee, and they all graduated. And I was very, thinking about 4 guys that came through the program and graduated. And Quay and Jacob and Twitty, they're all on their way to graduating. And it's very important because I told them, I said, this is going to affect this degree. Whether you play ball or not in the NFL, it's going to come to an end. I played 7 years and it came to an end. I got a brother-in-law, played 11 years and it came to an end. But having that degree is going to create other opportunities for you and your family. It's going to change. It can change your next generation of your people, where you can live and where you can go to school and where, what jobs you get and your platform you speak on. So on a daily basis, I always talk about them having a goal in football, but a goal in life. What matters to you? What's important to you? And we talk about those things on a daily basis. Some of them, whether it's talking about the stock market sometime or talking about what do you want to do? You want to be a psychologist? What's going to lead you to that? You want to be a teacher? What's going to lead you to that? So sort of making preparatory steps, keeping it before them. I talk about the things that I've done outside of football. I bring up people that don't play football and don't play sports, how they've made it in other areas. There's like an article I saw this summer about a former NBA player who played a few years in the 70s and 80s, but started a franchise and went into Wendy's and PepsiCo and made hundreds of millions of dollars. And it's not all about money, but you can be a success in other areas other than ball, and ball is a part of your life. It's a journey you take, and it's going to last for a part, and not everybody's going to be a coach. So just constantly bringing these things up, talking about character, talking about morality, righteousness, justice. I just constantly bring these things up and try to make sure I'm holding myself accountable, but also presenting myself as real. I let them know sometime about some weaknesses or failings that I might have had, or where I may have gone wrong in one way or another, and what I might have learned. But I'm aware of it. Always aware that you are being looked at and being someone is modeling after you. And the first one I had was my little brother. And I can remember getting in a car, and if I buckled up, he buckled up. If I didn't buckle, he didn't buckle. So I knew from early age, somebody's watching. And they're watching, whether they say they are or not. How you carry yourself, how you speak, how you dress, how you react to things, good or bad.
You've talked about your kids a bit. You're bringing 3 or have brought 3 into this world, daughter Cameron, sons Joshua and Caleb. When you're coaching, it's also, as you're mentoring these kids from 18 to 22, 23 years old, like you're raising them a bit, very formative years of their life. When you have those conversations, and you've talked about it a little bit, but if you can expand a bit more, when you have those conversations with your blood children, the ones that you fathered, also the kids that are coming through ETSU, how do you talk with them about being a member of an oppressed community? How do you frame what they're going to face in their lives?
As I talked before about being real and true, and I tell them this is the way things are. This is the way things were. Things have improved. And I said, there's perceptions out there, and I don't ever want you to be part of that perception. I want you to be better. I want you to set a higher standard. And you can't control what people sometimes they think of you, but you don't stop doing the work. You don't stop moving forward. If someone doesn't think you're smart and you work hard as you can, you make a B, you make a B, you make an A, you do it enough, they'll look at you as either exception or they'll change in one way or another. If you're slow or you look slow, but you're really fast, keep working. And so we just talk about working and preparing and going after what you want to go after. My daughter wants to be a doctor. And, we put her around doctors, put in internships, and volunteer here, read on this, read on that. My son's constantly about, what do you want to be besides a ball player? But if you want to be a ball player, understood, I'm going to find you the best coaches, the best trainers. It's all about preparation and exposure. And for my players, it's the same thing. I remember Matt Thompson, I was asking him, I said, what are you going to do this summer? I got an internship at the bank. Corey, what are you going to do? I'm going to do this. And if they're not doing it, I'm going to keep pestering them until they get an internship, until they do something beyond just football. With my boys, we're talking everything about not just race. We're talking about race, and we're talking about the way things are. But I call them out too. Another group might have stereotypes. They speak about you. But I say, look, it's not for them to judge. We're going to judge ourselves. We're going to evaluate ourselves. What are we doing to be the best we can be? Because in the end, we're going to be held accountable to God, not those other people. And that's what I do to my children. My players. I said, you got to look at yourself in the mirror and not just look at what that group has done to you, or what you think you're not. What are you doing? What can you better? Because in the end, we got to get up and work and live and improve regardless of what happened in the past. And we got to hope for a better future. And for my children, my players, we always talk about the future. We learn about the past, about 5% the past. But most of it, focus, you got to be where your feet are, but you got to be looking forward to the future, preparing for the future. And you got to believe you can be that one to overcome. And the more of us, the more of you that overcome, you can reach down and help others. And you can change the mind of people who think of you differently. If you can get into the circle of that group, and there's somebody maybe been in that circle that never seen someone like you in their group. If you can get in that circle and you can be that change agent, you can be that better person, you can do the work, you'll change that person. And then if you get an opportunity to be in charge, you be better. You look out for someone. That's really what it's about. It's never about hate. It's never gravitating. And I talk to my relatives about not becoming callous. You can't let your heart become callous over because people hate you. I liken it to this. If you get in an argument with a fool, and you know the person's foolish, but they're looking at you like you're a fool, it's like, does this person not realize what they're doing? And that's how it is when someone believes they're just better than you innately. It hurts. But nonetheless, you know what? Maybe I can't change them, but maybe it's just another person I can change. But I still got to get up and do the work and feed my family and provide and affect those people or kids that want to learn and want to do better.
Knowing there's people out there like that are the fools, as you put them, how do you keep that mindset? How do you stay with those thoughts of, I just have to worry about me. I have to worry about the future, not the past, not what this person's saying to my face, but what I can do to change their mind, what I can do to change the perception of me, what I can do, all about me rather than the outside noise. That's a very difficult skill to master. How have you mastered it?
I talk to my players about, it's what goes in the eyes and the ears on a constant basis. It's what comes out of your mouth. So I'm making sure that I'm feeding myself with words, with literature, the things I read, the music I listen to, the TV shows I watch, how much social media, Twitter I'm wallowing. And I'm aware, okay, man, I've been on this and I'm getting dirty inside. And so I try to change the source of what I'm listening to, what I'm reading. And if I'm watching or seeing too much negativity, I got to change that because our minds are powerful. And what goes in our minds is eventually, so you reap what you sow. If you put all bad in, eventually, if you hear all bad things about you, and you got to, change that narrative, speak positive to yourself, find some people that will speak positively about you. And I tell my children the same things, be aware of what you're listening to and what you're watching. Don't be passive about that. So I have to be aggressive about speaking life into myself, speaking life into my players, speaking life into my children, speaking life into my wife, or speaking life into my family or speaking life into this team, constantly speaking life, because there are problems, but we don't ever want to get caught in the problems. Let's look for the solution and let's build people up along the way. And I try to tell my children, my players, to be objective, to judge things fairly, but offer people grace, because we're all human, we all make mistakes, we're all selfish in ways, but fight hard not to be, fight hard to be fair, fight to be just. You know, that's what I tell my kids, my wife, and I tell the players. I tell them, like on the ball field, I'm not going to play you because I like you. I'm not going to not play you because I don't like you. I'm going to play the best player, and I'm going to let each one understand their role and what they can play. And it's like there's no favorites here, you know. I mean, because I recruited a kid doesn't mean I'm going to play him. I'm going to play the best player and in the best role. It might be Quay Holmes, man, you're great at this, but I want Jacob to run this route, you know. Or Jacob, you did this, but I want Quay to do that. And they understand. I'm going to be honest with them. And it's a fight to be fair. It's a fight to be just. And we have to look at ourselves individually and collectively as a group to make sure we're being fair and being just.
You mentioned selfishness. All of us are selfish in a way. I think it takes selflessness to be able to look at someone and have compassion, empathy, and want to help their cause. When we sit here, I'm not someone that has experienced racism in my life. There are going to be people that look like me, that hear your story, hear your thoughts and insights, that want to know how they can help change the narrative of racism, inequality, injustice in this country. What do you say to them? What are the action items?
Obviously, individually, if you know someone at work, I mean, African American or Asian or Hispanic, befriend that person. You know, if you hear people making jokes, stereotypes, you know, you got to find a way, maybe not in front of the whole group, but you go to that person individually that's making those remarks. Sometimes it's economic, sometimes it's just social. Making sure that group, it's sort of like if you have a player on your team and he's not popular, he doesn't have a friend, I might say, hey, Jacob, could you go over there and sit with so-and-so? Could you talk with them? You know, Coach Sanders might say, so-and-so hasn't made any friends yet, Coach, I need you to talk to him. And that's the same thing. If you see a guy or girl, or lady in your office that's ostracized because they don't hang out with you after work, they're not part of the lunchtime conversation, you got to try to find a way to pull them in, pull those people in and not exclude them from the group, not exclude them from the information, bring them in. You'll find that people are more like, and they have an interest for not just their self-interest, but for you and for their family. We're not so different when you break through the barriers. Reach out, extend a hand, or say, extend an olive branch to someone else that's not quite like you. And be aware of other people's sensitivities. And we talk about empathy. I played in a golf tournament Saturday, and it was for muscular dystrophy. I don't have anybody in my family with muscular dystrophy. I don't know anybody with muscular dystrophy. But all those people there, they were all Caucasian for the most part. They were hurting because it was their family members. I was there to support them, and I listened to their stories and listened to their songs. And that's what empathy is. I may not have suffered it, but I'll sit and listen to you and try to feel your pain. And if I can rectify and definitely not be part of the problem, and if I can be part of the solution, create an opportunity, open a door. When I have an opportunity, a platform, open my mouth, spend my money. We can do those things. You got to feel other people's pain, even if you haven't experienced and recognized it. That hurts. We can do it for animals. Not everybody, but a dog could be hurt and a cat can be hurt. You can see they have pain, you know. A dog shivering in winter or somebody didn't feed them. People are the same way. They hurt, their child hurt. Their child could have been wrong, but they still hurt at that loss. And that's empathy, putting myself in that person's shoes when they feel like they've been unjustly treated, just trying to understand how that feels. Not laying blame at their feet, but just sitting there and understanding the emotional pain they feel at that moment.
You've got really inspirational thoughts on this topic, Coach. Thank you so much for taking the time to share them with us. They're very important to hear, and continue the great work with your young men. Thank you.
Thank you.